The US military says it remains present and vigilant in the Strait of Hormuz shortly after Iran announced it was closing the critical shipping lane. Iran said the Hormuz closure comes after Israel's attack on southern Lebanon. Washington says it has seen no evidence of an actual blockade, with commercial vessels continuing to transit the critical oil choke point. The US Central Command says 55 merchant ships transited Strait of Hormuz on Saturday. US Vice President J.D. Vance said he is expected to go to Switzerland soon for talks with Iran amid Hormuz closure announcement. Earlier in an interview with Fox News, Vance said he was confident the ceasefire agreed in Washington's 14-point deal with Tehran it would hold.
Yeah, so we'll plan the talks when the principals from the Iranian government, also the Qatari and the Pakistani government arrive. That may happen as soon as tomorrow, but these things are always a little bit in flux. Jared and Steve have been on the ground now for a few hours, dealing with some of the technical elements of this negotiation. As you guys know, one of the things the president has set us out to do as a high priority is to open the straits. That's now happened. We actually got 16 million barrels of oil out of the Straits of Hormuz yesterday.
Meanwhile, Iran says the deal with US is in trouble if not implemented soon. It adds that Iran will respond with necessary measures if the commitments are not honored.
Well, the commitments are very clear. Clause 1 of the Memorandum of Understanding is the most important part of the parties' mutual commitments, namely, ending the war on all fronts, including in Lebanon. We have adhered to our commitments. The other side was obliged to compel those under its influence, specifically the Zionist regime, to cease fire in Lebanon. In this regard, we have seen that they have failed to fulfill their obligations, and this constitutes a clear violation of the ceasefire understanding.
Now, Tehran describes Hormuz closure as the first step in response to what it said are breaches of commitments. Iran has warned further measures would be taken if the alleged aggression continues. Pakistan says more talks are planned for Sunday in Switzerland after Iran announced Hormuz lockdown. Now, Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi have met Iranian officials in Tehran. Meanwhile, the Indian government says 3 of the vessels that transited the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday were Indian-flagged crude oil tankers. The tankers carrying over 94 Indian crew members are presently en route to India. Now, the Iran-US peace talks, remember, have been delayed over Israel-Hezbollah escalation in Lebanon. Tehran says the violence has undermined the conditions required for negotiations to move forward and end the West Asia war. While Tehran links future talks to stability in Lebanon, Washington remains firm on its core demand that Iran can never develop or acquire a nuclear weapon. Well, to discuss more on this, let me welcome my guest live from Washington, D.C., Georgia Cafiero, professor from Georgetown University and CEO of Gulf State Analytics. Welcome to the broadcast, sir. We know that Iran's IRGC says the Strait of Hormuz is closed, yet CENTCOM still counts 55 ships moving through. So is Tehran announcing a blockade that does not actually exist on the water, or is Washington downplaying the escalation? What could be the case?
I'm not exactly sure what is going on at this exact moment in the Strait of Hormuz, but I think if we zoom out a little bit, look at the bigger picture, what Iran is clearly trying to signal is that it will use the Strait of Hormuz as leverage if and when it believes that the U.S. and/or Israel is not abiding by the terms of the Islamabad MOU. And with Iranian officials soon to meet with Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and J.D. Vance in Switzerland, I think this is part of Tehran's strategy for using the leverage it has to come to the talks in Switzerland in a stronger position and to try to put pressure on the United States, to put pressure on Israel into halting its aggression against Iran's ally in Lebanon.
Professor, while it's still unclear which side has the leverage at the moment, Pakistan is still lining up technical talks in Switzerland on Sunday. And J.D. Vance is now even floating a visit. So how is this diplomatic choreography any different from the ones before? Because we've seen multiple.
Well, I think the signing of the Islamabad MOU constituted the greatest diplomatic breakthrough since this war erupted in late February. Now it's very clear that the Islamabad MOU is facing some serious obstacles. We've clearly hit speed bumps in terms of the situation in Lebanon, which constitutes the biggest flashpoint here. What we do know, and what is safe to say, is that Trump wants to see this war wind down. This is a war that has been very costly to the United States. It has been very costly to Trump in terms of his own interests. And he does want to see a diplomatic solution to this war. The point here, though, is that Iran is playing its cards and using its leverage to make sure that Israel is also responsible for halting aggression in Lebanon. In other words, Iran wants to make sure that Lebanon is linked to this MOU and that Israel is not able to get away with its continued aggression against Lebanon. This is really the key sticking point here. And as I said before, and I'll repeat, what the Iranians are trying to do is use their leverage, and they have a lot more leverage because of this war, and that's an important point. They're trying to use this new leverage to put pressure on the United States to rein in Israel.
As you rightly said, Professor, that Lebanon constitutes the major sticking point, the flashpoint at the moment. Its health ministry says over 4,000 people have been killed since March. The number is staggering. While civilians are still being killed on the ground, why does this level of loss still struggle to translate into urgency in international negotiations?
Well, that's an interesting question. I do think that the United States and Israel, what I should really say is the international community and Israel, have different perspectives on Lebanon. The Israelis frame the perceived threat to Israel as one which is existential. From the perspective of the international community, including the United States, the much bigger threat is a closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which we have seen in recent months has done so much to disrupt global energy markets and to disrupt other sectors in countries all over the world. And therefore, I think from the U.S. perspective, at least certainly from the Trump administration's perspective, it's very irritating what Israel is doing in Lebanon because it undermines the ability of the U.S. and Iran to find some sort of a new understanding that results in the Strait of Hormuz remaining open and Iran not acting aggressively toward its Arab neighbors in the Persian Gulf. Israel doesn't seem to care very much about what happens to the global economy. Israel's obsession is in establishing dominance over its neighbors, including Lebanon. So this brings us to a point where the Trump administration, at least let me say Trump himself, sees a major conflict of interest between the United States and Israel. Now this brings us to the important question: will the United States, with Trump in the White House, use American leverage to rein in Israel, or will Trump determine that the political costs of doing so are too high and do what many administrations have done in the past, which is to allow Israel to go berserk and to act aggressively toward its neighbors with no consequences from Washington? That's the question that matters right now.
Indeed, Professor Cafido, it is an important question, and it will be interesting to see who will set the term eventually in the Swiss talks. Thank you for sharing your insights and joining us on the broadcast.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.